Hey, so I'm just going to do a quick video, a very well-researched video that I've been inspired to do because I want to have a look at why or if or how mistrust in government and conspiracy theories, how these two relationships have socio-political effects on our society. So the main conspiracy theorist that I'm going to focus on, who's been in the news recently, is David Icke. And I'm going to look at why he's increased in popularity and how that looks in relation to figures of population trust in government and politicians, and have a look at those two analytically. And then I'm also going to have a look at prophecies that David Icke has made in his literature throughout the 90s and 2000s, and how or if they have come to fruition. So it's going to be an interesting one. I hope you enjoy it. I know that this is going to attract some hate on the internet, but in the words of very wise Cat Williams, you need haters. The fuck are you complaining for? So if there are haters out there that need someone to hate on, feel free to hate on me. Say my hair ain't luxurious when you know it is, bitch. Let's get into the video. So the place I'm going to start is having a look at David Icke. So he came out probably 30 years ago with a load of mind-blowing stuff, and people were like, oh my god, this guy's crazy. But he has increased in popularity massively over the last 30 years. He says himself that when he first started talking about this stuff, he couldn't fill a phone box, and now he is filling out the Wembley Arena. So what's changed? Why are people now listening to David Icke over the government and the official narrative of things? So I'm going to have a look at like some of the political factors that might be at play. And I'm going to specifically focus on the UK because that's where I'm from. But a lot of these things will be playing out on the global stage, so it will probably apply to most countries. The reference system that I'm going to use is going to be the same one that I used in my previous video because I thought that one worked quite well. So as I go through the video, I will say a number, and then if you go to the description box and find that number, you will find a link or a citation to where I got that information from. A lot of the stuff I've got about David Icke is from his actual literature, like the physical books, and some of those can be like brick sides. So I've done you a favour, and I've actually, if I'm referencing from one of his books, I have pinpointed the page number. Although I do recommend you read the book in its entirety because they are really well written, really well referenced, and very easy to read. If you don't have time to do that and you just want to fact check what I'm saying, I have pinpointed page numbers for you. So where shall I start? Okay, so there was there were figures published in 2019 that highlighted that only 14% of the British population generally trust politicians to tell the truth. That's reference point 1. So that means that 86% of people in the UK do not trust the government to tell the truth. So research into public views on austerity, which is reference point 2, showed the main reason is not so much a mistrust of individual politicians, but rather a lack of confidence in the entire system, the system as a whole. The government, regardless of the party in power, is perceived to make bad decisions. It wastes money, supports those whose actions damage society, which we will discuss later, penalises those who take responsibility for themselves, and fails to address real conflicts and needs, putting the services people actually want under severe threat. So that is reference point 3. Now, what I'm going to try and do now is outline some things that David Icke has only prophesied that have come true, but also that are contributing to a lack of trust in the official narrative and governments in general. So the main one that I get when I say to people, what was it that kind of triggered you to wake up or start questioning the official narrative of things, or start thinking, oh, actually, maybe there's something going on here. Maybe the government aren't being completely honest. And the main one that comes back is 9/11. So many people were triggered by this event to look up from their lives and say, oh, wait a minute, this official story seems to have a whole lot of holes in it. We have more questions than answers at the end of this official narrative. For example, how did jet fuel melt steel beams? How did the plane blow up the entire World Trade Center, but the terrorist passports magically survived the fire and the explosion, so that America could safely identify the correct terrorists responsible? And what about Building 7? There were so many questions after 9/11, and I think for a lot of people this was a trigger event to be like, oh, there's something going on here, definitely something going on here. And I think because people didn't trust the official narrative being given by their governments, it increased the lack of trust there. I mean, but that's understandable. If somebody lies to you, it destroys trust. It's a natural human response. If somebody lies, you don't trust them anymore, or you're very wary of what they say in the future. And I think that's the same with the governments as well. So another one that I think contributes to a lack of trust as well as a lack of respect and really just disgust towards the government are the sex scandals that have been coming out forever. So in David Icke's 2012 newsletter, which is reference point 5, he claimed that he had first been told about the real Jimmy Savile in the late 1990s. And Icke was the one that, after Savile had been outed as a paedophile, he exposed the necrophilia that he was into as well. So that's reference point 6. And for those of you that don't know what necrophilia is, it's literally having sex with dead bodies. Sir Jimmy Savile used to have sex with corpses. And it is worth pointing out as well that he was a sir. He had a knighthood. And the committee that recommends people for knighthoods received allegations of child sex abuse against Jimmy Savile in 1998. Reference point 7. And it was Margaret Thatcher, believe it or not, that lobbied for Savile to receive his knighthood. Number 8. So again, we have a politician lobbying for a paedophile to get a knighthood. And for me personally as well, I think that knighthoods, a lot of these paedophiles, Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, they have these knighthoods from the Queen, which, as far as I'm concerned, implicates the royal family in this child sex abuse. But David Icke was saying that he knew about this back in the 90s. A politician, a former Prime Minister of the UK that David Icke exposed or whistleblew as being a child abuser in his 1998 book, The Biggest Secret, was Sir Edward Heath. Again, another sir, another bloody knight of the Queen. That's a fucking nonce. So he accused Sir Edward Heath not only of being a child abuser, but also being involved in satanic... Sorry, I just had to evict Iron Man from the video. So Sir Edward Heath, David Icke exposed Sir Edward Heath in his 1998 book, The Biggest Secret, as not only being a child abuser, but of also being being involved in satanic child sacrifice. So that's reference point 9. Now, in 2015, there were articles circulating claiming that detectives in Wiltshire, London, Jersey, Hampshire and Kent were all investigating claims that the former Tory leader, Sir Edward Heath, was in fact a pedo. So this is reference point 10. So both of these guys that have been exposed as being pedos, basically, in the 2000s, David Icke was saying this back in the 90s. So I think, again, this contributes to, if you can call him crazy at the time, but actually if he's being proved right, it's giving him more legitimacy than the official story. So a report published in February of this year, 2020, by the Independent Inquiry into Child Sex Abuse at Westminster, that's reference point 11 if you want to have a look at that report, it found that I will say that they were investigating historical claims of child sex abuse, not current ones. But they found that British politicians actually turned a blind eye to the sexual abuse of children and actively covered up allegations over decades. The 173-page report found that several members of Parliament in the 1970s and 1980s, including Sir Peter Morrison private secretary to Margaret Thatcher, again I think implicating her, and Sir Cyril Smith were known or rumoured to be active in their sexual interest of children and were protected from prosecution in a number of ways by the police, prosecutors and political parties, but both still went on to receive their knighthoods. Like, what is going on with this? I seriously, if someone says that they're a sir, I automatically think, oh my god, it's a pedo. Like, why have all these paedophiles got knighthoods? I don't get it. So yeah, I think this one, oh, actually, I have got some more links to child abuse claims and cover-ups in Westminster at references 12, 13, 14 and 15, in case you just want to have a look at some more, because I mean, it is like that is a fucking pandemic. There is a pandemic of paedophilia in Westminster. And it's been going on for generations, and something needs to be done about this shit because it's fucked up. But I think it's an important factor, because if it's consistently coming out that the government that are elected to lead, not rule, that is an important distinction to make, because they are our representatives, not our rulers. But if they can't even be trusted to not have the basic human decency of not fucking with little kids sexually and not protecting their fucked up little mates that do it, how trustworthy are they as individuals, and what kind of other fucked up shit are they into? Like, for me personally, this issue is like a massive factor in my distrust of government. Like, I don't even trust most of them to run a race, let alone a country. I think they're fucking incompetent. But I digress. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about that David Icke predicted in 1998 was the financial crash of 2008. I quote, "The financial manipulation will spark a catastrophic financial downturn." So that is reference point 16. And again, this contributes to the mistrust of government, because the decision of government to burden the taxpayer with bailing out the banks because a few elitist, greedy wanker bankers decided to fuck everything up for everyone, instead of prosecuting the bankers that were at fault for the crash, the government told us that the banks are too big to fail, and the cost of the British taxpayer alone was £7 trillion. Yes, you heard that right. The bailout of 2008 cost the British taxpayer £7 trillion. That is reference point 17. So, you know that money that gets stolen out of your wage packet each month called the income tax? Well, they use that to pay this £7 trillion debt that we apparently now owe to private bankers. Ooh. So again, if David Icke is going to predict this in 1998 and then the government are then going to behave like that, I can see why a lot of people are now turning to conspiracy theorists over the official narrative of things, because that the government are proving over and over again that they are not trustworthy. You cannot trust them. They're liars. They're child abusers. And I'm getting a bit too passionate about this, so I'm going to try and reel myself in a little bit. But it is worth noting that after the 2008 financial crash, Icke eerily predicted that an even bigger one was to come, reference point 18, and what are we seeing now with this coronavirus? The entire economy is being crashed over this coronavirus. It is worth noting as well that he links the coronavirus with 5G, which is the video of his that has been removed from YouTube. So again, he is exposing things and being proven right time and time again. And so their answer now is just remove it. Don't even let people see it. But what it's actually doing is giving him momentum. People are like, well, what is he saying that I'm not allowed to listen to? It's sparking people's interest. So it's probably having the directly opposite effect to what they thought it was going to have. So to recap, we've got 9/11, we've got sex scandals, and we've got the financial crash of 2008 and of 2020. So all of these were predicted or whistleblowed by David Icke, and they are also major factors in contributing to mistrust and distrust of governments. So another thing that David Icke was speaking about in the 1990s was the idea of a global government. So that's reference point 19. And everyone said he was crazy. Like, no, that will never happen. So what are we seeing now in the 2000 teens? Tweens? I don't know what they're called. But anyway, in 2013, the World Government Summit was founded and has been held annually in Dubai with a dialogue about governmental process and policies with a focus on the issues of futurism, technology and innovation. So that's reference point 20. So we have a World Government Summit being held on an annual basis now. In June 2015, Pope Francis calls for a global government to tackle climate change. Reference point 21. Now, Icke is not a fan of climate change. He says it's a hoax. He thinks that the environment is being used in many ways to further the agenda through what he calls the problem reaction solution, whereby they cause a problem, they wait for the reaction, and then they give you the solution. If you're looking to impose global solutions, you need global problems, and the environment is perfect for that. It allows you to pass international laws and create centralized global organizations to police them. I mean, that makes so much freaking sense. And in 26th of March of this year, the ex-Prime Minister Gordon Brown calls for a global government to tackle coronavirus. So this idea of a global government is really on the cards now. It's imminent. We're really nearly there. It's going to happen. Another thing that he talks about, microchips. In the 90s, came out to say that they're trying to aim for a global microchip population, and people were like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. But what are we seeing now, guys? What are we seeing? So it's recently been mooted in the European Union whether microchips were going to be put forward. That is reference point 23. Most people were against it. It is worth making a point of that people were against it. But in August of 2017, workers at 3 Square Market, a Wisconsin-based company in America specializing in vending machines, lined up in the office cafeteria to be implanted with microchips. One after the other, they held out their hand to a local tattoo artist who pushed a rice grain-sized implant into the flesh between the thumb and forefinger. The 41 employees who opted into the procedure received complimentary t-shirts that read, "I got chipped." Reference point 24. A UK firm called Biotech, which offers implants to businesses and individuals, has already fitted 150 implants in the UK. That's reference point 25. Another thing that Icke talks about that seems to be coming true is a cashless society. So in the 90s, people just couldn't imagine a society without cash. But he predicted it, and globaldata.com predicts the UK as one of the countries that will be totally cashless by 2022. That's reference point 26, and it is worth pointing out at this point that the World Health Organization around this whole coronavirus thing has said to people to stop using cash because that's how the virus can get spread. So we're just one step closer to a cashless society, and once we're cashless, it's going to be a lot easier to then get a chip in us, because it's like, why do you need to take your card out to do contactless? Just put your hand on it. Give up your freedom. It was so much easier. Scary stuff, man. Okay, next thing he said that seems to be kind of backed up by science now is that we all live in a simulation. So back in the 90s, he was saying that the world around us is kind of more of a hologram than like a physical reality. And not only have like physicists gone on to say that physical objects are kind of made up of like 99% empty space, but researchers at the University of Southampton found evidence to suggest that everything we see and experience, including time, may actually be projected from a flat 2D surface, meaning everything we see and experience in 3D is actually an illusion. That's reference point 28. Another thing that he said that is being backed up now is that AI is a bad idea. So he says that he called this a transhumanist agenda, whereby technology is put into society in line with an agenda, cashless society, implantable microchips, etc. That's reference point 29. Stephen Hawking, the physicist, issued his own warning at the Web Summit Technology Conference in Lisbon 2017, where he claimed AI could be the worst event in the history of our civilization for the new dangers it brings for the few to oppress the many. Reference point 30. God, I've done loads of frigging references. Okay, and the last one that I'm going to mention is that he said that freedom of speech will be brought to an end. And what are we seeing, guys, with online censorship? Reference point 31. The removal of David Icke's own video interview around 5G has been completely removed from YouTube. It's reference point 32 if you want to read about the removal. But I think it's just highlighting him even more. It's just putting him even more into the spotlight. Why are you trying to shut him up? We have freedom of speech. If you're trying to take away someone's right to challenge the official narrative, it just implicates the people taking down the information as being guilty of something. Like, let them say whatever they want. Like, even if people do believe it, if the government are telling the truth, then they should just rely on the truth prevailing, because that is what the truth does. And I think what they're finding is the truth is prevailing, so they are removing it. So I'm just going to end this video on a little thing that David Icke said that I really like and I want to share with you. So it's the idea that we are mentally and spiritually free because we are following what we believe to be right is an illusion. We are only truly free when we are as determined that others should be able to do the same. The suppression of one human being or animal is the suppression of us all. When we have no desire to impose our views on others, and when we celebrate diversity of thought and lifestyle that have been freely chosen, then we can begin to say that the programming of this world and the elite machine is breaking up and falling away within us, but not until. Very powerful words. I hope you enjoyed this video and it's given you something to think about. If you do decide to purchase David Icke's books just to check my referencing system, I do hope that you read the books in their entirety, because I promise you, your mind will be expanded to new dimensions and you will be a different person. So namaste. I hope you all stay safe, and yeah, hope you enjoyed this.